I had just walked into my favorite country bar and grill, grabbed a seat at a small table in the back, and ordered a sandwich, fries, and a beer. While waiting for my meal, I got lost in the TV, which was playing a PBS special about country music legends. The show had a bittersweet tone, as they shared stories about these stars, most of whom had already passed away, although a few were still around. I was struck by how many of them had started from nothing, coming from incredibly poor backgrounds. As I dug into my food, I looked up and saw my best friend Mike strolling in with Emma. That sight was a punch to the gut. You see, I thought Emma was my girlfriend. I had asked her out tonight, but she claimed she was already meeting some friends and suggested we go out tomorrow instead. Emma and I had been dating for 6 months, and I thought we were serious. We spent nearly every weekend together. I was falling for her, and she said she felt the same. We even talked about getting engaged, but decided to wait a few more months. No need to rush since we were steady. After the PBS special ended, someone turned on the jukebox and Crazy by Tammy Wynette started playing. I listened to the lyrics. I knew you'd love me as long as you wanted, and then someday you'd leave me for somebody new. It made me wonder if Mike was the new guy. The worst part was, Mike knew how much I cared about Emma. It seemed our bro code didn't matter to him. I continued listening to the song as they acted all cozy. The final verse hit, crazy for thinking that my love could hold you. I'm crazy for trying and crazy for crying, and am crazy for loving you. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up and walked over to Mike and Emma. They looked at me, and Mike started to speak. Jack, But I cut him off. Shut up. If I see you again, one of us is going to end up in the hospital. And Emma, I'm done with you. You've shown your true colors. I stormed out of the bar. The next day, Emma kept calling, but I ignored her. Eventually Mike called, so I picked up. What do you want? I snapped. Jack, I'm really sorry. You know I've always liked Emma. And while we were talking at work, I asked her out and she said yes. Don't give me that. You knew she was my girl and you asked her out anyway. How many times have you been with her? Jack, it was only… How many times, Mike? If you lie to me, I'll come after you. 3 times, Jack. We developed feelings for each other. I'm sorry. What about Sarah? Does she know you cheated on her? She deserves better. I don't want to see you again. As for Emma, you can have her. I hung up. Sarah was Mike's girlfriend, and all 3 of us, Mike, Sarah, and I, worked at the same plant. There's a story about how we all met. Emma called again, so I finally answered. What do you want, Emma? I'm sorry. Mike asked me out a few times, and I eventually said yes. It didn't mean anything. Cut the crap. Mike told me you were together at least 3 times, probably more. Was it the money? Good luck with that. You 2 deserve each other. I want nothing to do with you. The only person I feel sorry for is Sarah. She thought you and Mike were her friends. Stay out of my life and stop calling. I grew up in Kentucky with 8 siblings. As the oldest, I played football in high school. When I was a senior, I got a scholarship to a college in Ohio. Standing at 63 inches and weighing 260 pounds, I played offensive lineman. My parents couldn't afford to send me to college, so I grabbed the scholarship opportunity. I wanted to become a mechanical engineer because I loved working with my hands. I was usually reserved, but had a soft spot for women. Growing up with sisters taught me to respect women. My mom always said to treat girls the way I'd want my sisters treated. I became friends with a guy named Mike. He was sociable, though not into sports. He was smart and mentioned having some family money, saying he didn't have much now, but there might be an inheritance someday. He was studying business management. When I wasn't busy with football, we hung out. Mike was great with the ladies. We went to many parties, and women were always around. I was the shy one, but a lot of girls liked me. I owe Mike for that. Without him, my shyness might have kept me from meeting anyone. After graduation, I stayed in Ohio and got a job as a mechanical engineer at Ford Motor Company. The pay was good, and I found a small apartment near the plant. I also got myself a late model pickup truck. Every week, I saved some money and sent my parents $500 a month to help out. My dad was a coal miner, and we shared a strong family bond. Mike landed a job at a warehouse in the same city where I worked at the Ford plant. It turned out he was one of our suppliers. Eventually, he worked his way up to becoming the warehouse manager. We'd hang out on weekends, and he told me about his girlfriend at his workplace. Her name was Sarah, and she was the inventory control manager. When he introduced me to Sarah, I could have easily fallen head over heels for her, but Mike and I had a solid bro code. No messing with each other's girls. It was tough, but I honored that pact. I did date a couple of women from my plant, but it was strictly platonic. I couldn't join Mike on double dates often because being around Sarah stirred up feelings. She was always so sweet to me. Mike invited me to their plant's Christmas party. Since they were one of our suppliers, I figured why not and agreed to go. At the party, I met a stunning woman named Emma. She had curves and a figure that turned heads. Emma dressed more provocatively than Sarah and was quite the flirt. She worked with Mike and Sarah as a secretary for one of the higher-ups. I told her about my job, and we spent the night dancing. We decided to meet again, and even went out with Mike and Sarah for New Year's Eve. Sarah mentioned being happy for me finding someone, but it didn't feel sincere. That night, I took Emma back to my place. She was, well, quite impressive. The next morning, Emma seemed surprised by my modest apartment. I explained that my job was relatively new and that I didn't need much, as I was sending money home to help my family. I told her that someday I might worry about material things, but not now. She brought up Mike's wealthy family and wondered if it was true, given that he was my best friend. I confirmed it and mentioned they covered his education costs. Our dating continued, and we were out almost every weekend. My feelings for her deepened, and she claimed to feel the same. We did all sorts of things together, and the bedroom action was a highlight. However, her flirtatious nature and obsession with material things bothered me. I tried to reassure her that we could build a good life together. Still, double dates with Mike and Sarah felt tense, and I couldn't figure out why. Emma and I had been together for about 6 months. We talked about our future and maybe getting engaged someday. Emma said there was no rush. We went to a county fair, and at a budget jewelry stand, I got Emma a friendship ring. I told her it meant she was mine until she was ready for an engagement. She smiled as she put it on. By the way, I should mention that I hit the gym after work 3 times a week. I had slimmed down to 230 pounds and felt pretty good about myself. Then came that moment at the country bar and grill. Seeing my girl and best friend locking lips took a toll on me. After I saw them at the restaurant and talked to them on the phone, I cut ties with both of them. Even though I was furious, I felt bad for Sarah. 2 weeks passed, and my phone rang. "Jack, I'm so sorry about you and Emma. I figured she might mess up, but I never thought it'd be with Mike." "What's the deal, Sarah? Are you saying there were others?" "At work, I saw her having lunch with her boss, Tom. It seemed regular. I thought about telling you but didn't want to hurt you in case I was wrong. Then I found out about Emma and Mike. When I did, I cut ties with both of them. It's tough seeing them at work, but I stay busy." "Sarah, thanks for reaching out. I was worried about you. You're one of my closest friends. Maybe we can catch up sometime." "I'd like that, Jack. Good to talk to you." After our conversation, I wasn't sure if I felt better or worse. A couple of weeks passed, and one evening at the Super Johnette, I bumped into Sarah. "Hey Jack, nice to see you. How's everything going?" "Pretty good. And you? Back in the dating game?" She smiled. "I've turned down a few offers because I'm interested in someone special. I don't want to mess things up if he calls." "Oh, I'm sorry. I was actually going to ask if you'd like to—" "Yes, I'd love to go out with you. You're the one I was hoping would ask. So when and where should we meet? I need to know how to dress." I was thinking Saturday at my favorite country bar and grill. We exchanged goodbyes, and I confirmed I'd pick her up at 6. When I arrived at her place, she was rocking a Western look. Jeans, a vest, cowgirl hat, and boots. She looked fantastic. I opened the truck door, and she hopped in. Saturdays at the bar featured a country Western band and singer. We found a booth and ordered a couple of beers. With the band not starting for another hour, we had some time to chat. I was taken aback to learn that Sarah was originally from Kentucky, just a county away from where I grew up. She went to college there, then moved to Ohio for a job at the supply plant. We placed our food order. I got a double bacon cheeseburger and fries, while she chose a Reuben sandwich, and we shared the fries. Reconnecting with her felt really good. She asked if this was the bar where I caught Mike and Emma. I confirmed it was, but added that I wouldn't let a couple of cheaters ruin my favorite spot. She smiled in understanding. When the band started playing, we got up to dance. They began with a couple of slow songs to get couples onto the dance floor. Their playlist always included the classic hits everyone loved. They switched to a faster tune, and we sat out. I mentioned to Sarah that I wasn't much for fast dances, but I enjoyed watching the women move. They played a couple of Elvis Presley songs, which I've always had a soft spot for, followed by some Dolly Parton tracks. Sarah and I danced to the slow ones. When the announcer called for line dancing, a few guys joined the ladies. "Why not join the line dancing?" I teased Sarah. "You just want to check out my big A," she replied with a playful grin, heading to join the other women. As the line dancing started, I couldn't take my eyes off Sarah. She looked back at me and gave her booty a playful shake. I grinned and clapped for her. When the song ended, she came back with a smile, and I leaned in to kiss her. Apologizing, I pulled back. "I'm not sorry," she said, kissing me again. We had a blast dancing and enjoying our beers. Time flew by, and soon the last song was announced. I held Sarah close as we swayed to the music. When the song ended, I leaned in and kissed her again. I dropped her off at her place and asked if she'd like to go out again next Saturday. I suggested a trip to Cedar Point, a big amusement park in Ohio. She happily agreed, and we exchanged a goodnight kiss. Not wanting to rush things on our first date, I felt fantastic the entire week at work. On Friday, I called Sarah to confirm our plans for Saturday. She mentioned she'd heard about the park, but had never been. Saturday morning, I picked her up and we headed to the park. We chatted during the drive, and I asked if she'd mentioned to Mike or Emma that we were dating. She said she hadn't spoken to either of them about it. We had an amazing time riding roller coasters and trying out various other rides. The park had lots of shows, which we enjoyed. On our way back, we stopped for dinner at a Texas roadhouse. By the time we got home, we were both exhausted. Sarah shared her place with a roommate named Laura, a friendly woman in her 50s who worked at a retail store. Sarah appreciated having Laura as a roommate since she treated her like family, and they had a close bond. I told Sarah that I'd be out of town the upcoming weekend but wanted to see her the week after. She asked me to call her when I got back. After a kiss, I told her I genuinely cared for her. She said she'd always liked me too. When I got home, I called her and invited her to a significant dinner event. My boss was hosting an anniversary celebration for himself and his wife at the Hilton Hotel. I explained that I'd booked a hotel room for the night because there would be drinking. I understood if she didn't want to attend. Her response was enthusiastic. "Jack, I'd love to go with you. We won't need 2 beds, you know. I want you to know I'm falling in love with you. Just promise to be honest and not lead me on. I'd never hurt you, and I'll make sure no one else does either." "Sarah, could we use your car? I'd rather not show up at a fancy event in my truck." "We can take my car, and I'll let Laura know I won't be home that night." I parked my truck at her place, and we took her car to the event. We arrived early, planning to get ready at the hotel. During the drive, Sarah mentioned she was thinking of finding a new job because she was uncomfortable seeing Mike and Emma regularly. She also shared a rumor that Emma might be pregnant. For the party, I got dressed in the bathroom, putting on a tuxedo. When I came out, Sarah looked stunning in a form-fitting blue dress that highlighted her figure, her hair cascading to her shoulders. "You look absolutely gorgeous. I might not even care about the party itself," I said. "Oh, no, you don't. I didn't go through all this effort just to change again," she replied with a smile, and we headed downstairs to the party. When we arrived, my boss and his wife greeted us warmly. As they moved away, I noticed him sneaking glances at Sarah. Knowing many of the attendees, I introduced Sarah to my acquaintances, and she received numerous compliments. We grabbed drinks and found a table. The event featured a variety of appetizers, with a formal dinner planned later. Sarah recognized a couple of women from her job, as her role in inventory control often brought her in contact with them. I decided to approach Mary, the head of human resources, to inquire about job opportunities. "Mary, are there any openings in inventory control or the supply chain?" I asked. "Actually, yes," Mary replied. "Janice is retiring next month, and I'm looking for her replacement. Do you have someone in mind?" "My date, Sarah. You've met her. She's currently handling inventory control and is looking for a new opportunity. She enjoys her work but is ready for a change. Tell her to come see me on Monday, and I'll schedule an interview. She's quite impressive," Mary said with a knowing smile. "Thank you, Mary. I really appreciate it." "I'm sure you do," she chuckled. The party was a lot of fun. I danced with a few employees' wives while Sarah danced with their husbands. Most of the time, though, we danced together. The dinner was fantastic, offering choices like roast beef, chicken, or shrimp, along with all the sides. After a couple more drinks, we said our goodnights and headed up to our hotel room. Sarah, are you sure about this? I don't want you to feel like I'm taking advantage. Jack, stop worrying and just be with me, she replied, pulling me closer. I helped her out of her dress, and we hung it up neatly along with my tuxedo. We pulled down the covers, and well, you can guess the rest. As we snuggled up in the dark, her last words before we drifted off were, "I love you, Jack." The next morning, the aroma of fresh coffee woke me up. Sarah had showered, dressed, and brewed us each a cup. "Morning, Jack. Sleep well?" she asked with a smile. "It's been a long time since I slept this well," I replied. After a quick shower and coffee, we went down to the dining room for breakfast. Among the other employees, we saw several familiar faces, all smiling at us. "Looks like we're the talk of the party," I said to Sarah. Mary stopped by our table on her way out and said, "See you Monday," with a wink. "What was that about?" Sarah asked, curious. "I forgot to mention, you've got an interview with Mary at Ford on Monday," I said, grinning. "Remember you were thinking about a job change?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "Jack, I can't believe this. I love you so much." On our way back home, I said, "Sarah, I hope I'm not rushing things, but in 2 weeks I'm planning to visit my parents in Kentucky. I'd love for you to come with me. We can leave Friday evening and return Sunday. We can also stop to see your parents if you'd like." "I'd be happy to join you, but my parents are pretty old-fashioned, so we might not be able to share a room," she said. "I'm sure everything will work out fine," I assured her. When the day came for our trip to Kentucky, Sarah mentioned a rumor that Mike and Emma were planning to marry next month because of Emma's pregnancy. Emma probably thinks she's marrying into money, but she'll find out soon enough that Mike's wealth isn't what it seems. It's mostly his parents' money, and he's deep in debt, I shared. When we arrived at my parents' home, we were greeted by the sight of a spacious old farmhouse with numerous bedrooms and bathrooms. My siblings who still lived there came out to welcome us, followed by Mom and Dad. I hugged everyone and introduced Sarah, who received a warm reception. We spent a couple of hours catching up. My family instantly adored Sarah. As she looked at the photos on the wall, particularly one of me in my football uniform from high school, I noticed her eyes welling up with tears. "Sarah, what's wrong? Are you okay?" I asked, concerned. "Do you remember playing football at Grayling during an away game? After the match, you walked through the tunnel and saw 2 guys trying to drag a girl in a yellow sweater into the tunnel. You intervened, threw one of them down, and tackled the other. You warned them never to bother the girl again, then walked away into the locker room." "Yeah, I remember that, but I've never told anyone about it. How do you know?" "Jack, I was that girl. I never saw your face, just the number 67 on your jersey. I tried to find you afterward, but no one knew who you were. I found out your name was Charles, but that was it. I was waiting by the tunnel for my friend when those 2 guys grabbed me and tried to drag me away. You saved me, and they never bothered me again." She leaned in and kissed me. "I felt something familiar about you the first time we met, when Mike introduced us. That's the only good thing I can say about Mike. He introduced us." My mom had set up a cozy bed for Sarah while I was given a spot in the basement where there was an extra bed. Around 1 in the morning, Sarah quietly slipped down to join me. We shared a tender, intimate moment despite the circumstances, and after about an hour, she returned to her room. On Saturday, we visited Sarah's family. To my surprise, her parents were quite affluent. They lived in a beautiful house, and Sarah had 2 younger sisters who were both very attractive. She introduced me as her boyfriend. I overheard Sandy, one of her sisters, telling Sarah that I looked quite handsome. Inside, we chatted for a while. Her father, Hank, asked about my job and background, showing his protective side. "Mr. Thompson, I'd like to speak to you about marrying your daughter." "I'm here to ask for your blessing," I said, catching Sarah off guard. She looked at me, her eyes wide and filled with tears. "Even though we haven't been together long, our love is strong. We believe we can build a wonderful life together." "Jack, I appreciate you coming to me, though you didn't have to. Sarah follows her heart." "Sarah, do you love Jack?" Hank asked. "Yes, Daddy, I truly do with all my heart," Sarah replied. "Then you have my blessing, on one condition. You must get married here in Kentucky, so your mom and I can give you a proper wedding, and we'll cover all the expenses," he said with a smile. I took out an engagement ring from my pocket, knelt down, and proposed to Sarah. She said yes, kissed me, and then rushed to her parents, embracing them as they shed tears of joy. We enjoyed a fantastic chicken dinner together, celebrating our engagement. Back at my parents' house, we shared the news of our engagement. Mom and Dad were thrilled. Many of my relatives who lived nearby came over for a barbecue. Dad took on the role of grill master while Mom prepared the sides inside. Sarah offered to help in the kitchen, mentioning her love for cooking. My relatives were excited to meet Sarah, the first woman I'd brought home. They all agreed she was a keeper and encouraged me to make her happy. After a day of celebration, we bid farewell to our relatives, promising to keep them informed about the wedding plans. Before heading to bed, Sarah whispered to me that my mom had warned her about an obstacle on the stairs. It turned out she had accidentally kicked a pair of shoes, sending them tumbling down. Sarah tried to apologize, but Mom reassured her, saying she had been young once too, and that Sarah's lively spirit was probably why she ended up with so many children. Sarah came back downstairs later, and we shared another intimate moment, trying to be as quiet as possible. She didn't return upstairs until nearly 5 in the morning. In the morning, Mom and Sarah exchanged knowing smiles over breakfast. We all enjoyed a hearty country meal before saying our goodbyes and heading home. On Monday, Sarah had her appointment with HR. By Tuesday, she received a call from Mary confirming she got the job and could submit her 2-week notice. Sarah called to share the news, though I already knew. We decided to celebrate by having dinner at my favorite country bar. At the restaurant, we both ordered steak dinners. Sarah mentioned that Mike and Emma were on vacation, off to Las Vegas to get married. She said these 2 weeks without them were the most enjoyable she'd had at the plant. She added that while everyone was sad to see her leave, they understood she was moving on to a better opportunity. Working at Ford meant having one of the highest-paying jobs in the area, and Sarah felt fortunate to have secured the interview and job offer. She truly earned it. She had kept our relationship and engagement a secret from her co-workers. Before leaving, she left an anonymous note on Mike's desk, advising him to consider a DNA test when the baby was born, given Emma's frequent lunches with her boss. The note ended with congratulations, but was unsigned. Since starting at Ford, Sarah always wore a radiant smile. Whenever guys approached her for dates, she proudly showed off her engagement ring and made it clear she was taken. They wisely backed off. Sarah shared that Laura was helping her plan the wedding. Laura acted like a caring guardian. She had a married daughter of her own, and she and Sarah became close friends, sharing expenses as roommates. I made a point to drop by a couple of times each week to help wherever needed. I reached out to my mom and asked if she could provide a list of relatives and friends to invite from our side of the family. My mom went the extra mile and took care of the wedding invitations for us. I provided her with the wedding date, which was set for 4 months away. Sarah informed her mom about the date as well, and her parents took on the responsibility of finding a suitable church and a spacious venue for the reception. Sarah's mom, with her business connections, volunteered to handle sending out invitations to their side of the family. While I was feeling the pressure, I realized I was contributing the least to the planning. I approached several colleagues at work to see if they'd be interested in attending the wedding in Kentucky. Surprisingly, many expressed their intention to come. Laura, through her connections at the retail store, arranged for a dressmaker to create Sarah's wedding gown. Laura also confirmed that she and her daughter would be attending. Sarah's mother, Sophie, called to inform us that she had secured a caterer but needed a head count closer to the wedding date. Sophie also mentioned that her husband, Hank, had arranged for a talented band to perform. Everything seemed to be falling into place. I asked Sarah if we were going overboard with the preparations, given the substantial cost. "Jack, this grand wedding is my parents' dream. They've envisioned this kind of wedding for their daughters since we were little. My sisters will have similarly lavish weddings," Sarah explained. "Why didn't you tell me about your family's wealth?" I asked. "I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for my family's money. I only told Laura, not even Mike knows. Does this change anything for you?" "Not at all. I'm interested in you, not your family's wealth. If you'd like, I'm willing to sign a prenuptial agreement," I offered. "Jack, there's no need for a prenup. I believe we'll be together forever. Besides, I don't have much wealth now. Maybe in the future through inheritance, but not now. I'll have a loving husband to support me," she assured me. Sarah sorted out her wedding party lineup. Her father would walk her down the aisle, her older sister would be the maid of honor, and her younger sister would be a bridesmaid. She invited my two married sisters to be bridesmaids as well. My brothers-in-law would be my groomsmen, and my single brothers would pair with her sisters. My younger brother would be my best man, and my niece and nephew were chosen as the flower girl and ring bearer. Everyone gladly accepted, making it a true family affair. Sarah was thriving in her new job and was well liked by her colleagues. However, a dilemma arose. Since she had only been there for 4 months, she hadn't accrued any vacation days. We considered heading to Kentucky on Friday night, getting married on Saturday, and returning on Sunday. It would be a whirlwind, but it seemed doable. 2 weeks before the wedding, the plant manager called me to his office. We had a good rapport, and he mentioned he was planning to attend the wedding. "Hey Jack, I heard about the issue with your wedding schedule. Mary mentioned you're planning to leave Friday, get married Saturday, and return Sunday. Is that right?" John asked. "Yeah, John, that's the plan. Sarah doesn't have any vacation days left," I replied. "Well, make sure you let your lovely wife know we're granting her personal time from Thursday through the following week. Also, I've got 2 tickets for a 4-day cruise as a honeymoon gift," John said, handing me the tickets. "Thanks, John. She'll be thrilled," I said, shaking his hand. I went to Sarah's office and told her we were going out for lunch, as I had something important to discuss. At the restaurant, Sarah inquired, "What's up, Jack? What's this important thing you need to talk about?" John called me into his office and informed me they're giving you time off from Thursday through the following week. We don't have to rush, and there's more. He gave us 2 tickets for a 4-day cruise as a wedding gift, I said, placing the tickets on the table. Sarah started tearing up. With everything ready for the wedding, we could now head down on Thursday, making things much simpler. The rehearsal and rehearsal dinner were set for Friday. I checked with my dad if he needed money, and he told me he had saved all the money I sent him since we announced the wedding. I really admired and respected that man. After the dinner, I kissed Sarah and told her I'd see her the next day. Sarah had informed her mom about the number of guests attending both the wedding and the reception, but didn't tell me the count, mentioning that I was already nervous enough. I knew all my siblings, aunts, uncles, and their families would be there. The motels in both counties had been fully booked for months, and I hoped our guests found accommodations. On Saturday morning, I woke up to the smell of breakfast. My mom insisted I eat something to calm my nerves for the big day ahead. Over breakfast, she mentioned meeting the Thompsons and how much they admired me. After breakfast, I took a long shower, shaved, and dressed in my white tuxedo to match Sarah's gown. My brothers, also dressed in black tuxedos, were ready as part of the wedding party. We headed to the church, which was in the neighboring county, about 20 miles away. The church was impressive, with a capacity of over 600 people. As guests arrived, my brothers and I assisted them in finding their seats. Despite their protests that I should relax, I insisted on helping. Laura and her daughter arrived, and I guided them to Sarah's family section. It was heartwarming to see relatives I hadn't seen in years, and some of my colleagues, including my boss John and his wife, who had flown in for the occasion. Soon, I was instructed to go to the front of the church because Sarah's limousine had arrived, and I wasn't supposed to see her before the ceremony. I chatted briefly with my parents before the organist began playing. After a few songs, an announcement was made for the guests to take their seats as the wedding was about to begin. Every wedding has its unique touches, and ours was no different. I walked to the front and stood beside the minister. First down the aisle was Sandy, escorted by my brother. They made a stunning pair. Next was Anna, with my other single brother. My married brothers followed, walking with their wives. Then my nephew came down the aisle as the ring bearer, although I had the actual ring in my pocket. 2 men rolled out a white cloth, and my niece scattered rose petals as she walked. The music shifted, and everyone stood up. The wedding march began, and Sarah appeared, escorted by her proud father. She looked like an angel, and I felt tears streaming down my face. "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" the minister asked. "Her mother and I do," her father replied. We exchanged vows. I placed the ring on her finger, and then I was given the go-ahead to kiss the bride. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Charles Smith," the minister announced. The crowd erupted in cheers. We stood at the church entrance with the wedding party, thanking everyone for coming. It took over 30 minutes for the church to empty out. Guests then headed to the rented hall for the reception. When we arrived at the hall, drinks and appetizers awaited everyone. A band was playing, though not many were dancing yet. Tables were arranged around the room. As we entered, the crowd stood and cheered. We took our seats. Mr. Thompson said a few words, and then announced that dinner was ready. The serving tables were set up on both sides to ensure everyone was served quickly. Although Sarah and I were served first, we finished last due to the frequent clinking of glasses prompting us to kiss. Some tables were moved back to create more space for dancing. Sarah and I were the first on the dance floor, followed by the wedding party, and soon everyone joined in. The reception lasted for 4 hours, with some guests even going back for seconds. It was an unforgettable night. Epilogue. We had an incredible time on our honeymoon cruise. Bringing my truck to the wedding turned out to be a great decision, as I rented a small U-Haul to transport all our gifts. Upon returning home, we started looking for a new house, and eventually found a beautiful 3-bedroom home with a hot tub. Initially, we spent a couple of weeks in my small apartment, but Sarah felt we needed more space. We left the gifts at Laura's house since we wouldn't be living there. Laura assured us she was fine on her own and enjoyed taking care of Sarah, but now that responsibility was shared with me. Every evening, we worked on writing thank you cards and are nearly finished. We also have lunch together at work about 3 times a week. It's been 3 months since the wedding, and things are going great. We haven't had any arguments, always discussing and resolving any differences. We've always been told that communication is key, and we actively practice that. Sarah mentioned that one of her friends from another workplace called her and told her that Emma had discovered Mike was in significant debt. There was also a rumor that someone had advised Mike to get a DNA test when Emma had the baby, though the source of that information was unclear. A few weeks later, Sarah received another call with more news about Mike and Emma. It turned out Mike took the DNA test, which confirmed he wasn't the father. Isn't that something? Thank you for reading my story. The part about the country music is true. I actually saw it on PBS.